Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet. I'll go to Mr. Evans first for apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Leader. I have apologies from Councillor Elliot King.
Are there any other apologies for the meeting?
Nothing else.
If not, then we'll move on to item 2, which is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Are there any interests that members or officers need to declare for today, please? Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I've got a personal and prejudicial interest in item 14 and 16 of close relative that uses the airport, and I'll have to leave during public questions as well as the items on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, item 7, local authority governor appointment, member of the panel. I will remain but not vote.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any other hands, but Mr. Evans, if you can advise if there are any others.
Sorry.
Present. If not, we'll move then
Leader?
to item 3.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Gwilym.
Yeah, sorry, I did have my hand up. I don't know why it didn't show up. I've got a personal and prejudicial interest in item 7 on the agenda, the school governor appointment. So I leave the meeting.
Okay, many thanks. Okay, if there are no further declarations, we'll move to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting of the 15th of December. I've not had any requests for any amendments, but happy to take them. If not, could I ask you to show your approval of the minutes by raising your virtual hands? Or physical hands, either are good. Okay, those are approved. Next, we go to announcements of Leader of the Council. I'm just one announcement for today. Very pleased to announce that we've been successful in one of our levelling up bids. This will see a £20 million investment in the Harvard Copper Works, some historic sites, as well as Swansea Museum. Disappointed, obviously, that not all of our bids were approved, but certainly our £20 million bid will help regenerate the river corridor and a number of our heritage sites. So very pleased for that. And I congratulate the officers for the work that they did to ensure we had a very strong bid that was successful. So congratulations on that. With that then, Mr. Evans, I will now move to public questions. And I'll call Mr. Evans in to explain how we will deal with the questions.
Okay, thank you, Leader and Cabinet. 4 people have submitted written public questions prior to the deadline at noon yesterday. Questions and correspondence continue to be received past the deadline, and those who submitted after the deadline were advised of the fact that they were invited to the Cabinet meeting and that 10 minutes had been allocated for public question time. Those that submitted post-deadline have been told that the Leader of the Council may invite them to ask their questions should time allow. If there are no time, then the public obviously will receive written responses. There are no additional people in than those who have asked the questions, so that isn't an issue at the moment. Of the 4 people who have asked questions, only 3 have joined this meeting. So unless the last person joins before the end of public question time, obviously they're not going to be able to ask their question. So of the 3 you've got present are Bob Oliver, Mark Anderson and Alan Bailey. And before you call Bob Oliver to ask his question, can I just remind all members of the public that this meeting is broadcast live, and as such, care should be taken to avoid any abusive or defamatory comments against either officers or councillors or indeed other members of the public. So with that in mind, can I call Bob Oliver to ask his question?
Hello, yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. So thanks, Leader, and thanks, Hugh, for introducing that. My name is Bob Oliver. I'm chairman of the Swansea Airport Stakeholders Alliance. And over the last 18 months, we've consulted stakeholders from a range of sectors: charitable, educational, business, voluntary, biodiversity, and aviation, locally and nationally. Stakeholders recognised the enormous potential that the 450-acre airport site has to deliver societal benefit. The current commercial model of operation was widely felt to have failed, resulting in decades of mismanagement and neglect, and to have caused substantial losses of public assets and reputational damage to Swansea. The Alliance worked with stakeholders and potential partners to present to the Council a progressive new public policy approach, a not-for-profit enterprise that would deliver social, environmental and economic benefits, as well as a modest, sustainable aviation facility. This would benefit the people of Swansea and future generations and deliver a facility in which we could all take pride. This opportunity will be lost if the Council accepts the report in front of it today. So on to the question, and thanks for allowing me to make the introductory remarks. Question: how can councillors and the public accept this report as credible when it asserts that the tenant has made sufficient progress and complies with lease conditions to repair, replace and not remove equipment or premises, to open the airport for 350 days a year and to provide public refreshment facilities? Anyone can see that navigation aids and runway lights have been removed. One hangar has been unusable for almost 2 years for want of repair. The airport is closed for more than 100 days a year, and the cafe shut 7 years ago. And why does the report not mention that the Council's own progress review group has recorded virtually no progress on these matters in the last 18 months, or that the Council served a statutory pre-forfeiture notice on the tenant in respect of breaches of the lease? Now, do you want me to go on to my second question?
Could I?
No, Mr. Oliver, we'll take them one at a time, but I'll call Councillor Hopkins in to respond as the relevant cabinet member.
Yeah, sure.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Oliver, for giving me the opportunity, particularly to submit the court in writing. What I would say, obviously, the statement that you read out initially, a personal comment, particularly on that, but going into the question itself, I think what we need to do is the council needs to be quite mindful of the existing landlord-tenant relationship. The council is therefore unable to comment on specific lease conditions associated to the breaches of the lease and remedies going forward, which are available on these potential commercially sensitive and may be subject to legal proceedings. The tenant is entitled to renewal of a lease in accordance with provisions of the Landlord-Tenant Agreement Act 1954. The Act accepts and redeems the issues of non-compliance in terms of the lease. The council wishes to oppose any renewal of the lease on the basis of the current breaches. The council would need to be satisfied of statutory grounds in S30, 1 of the Act. The council can confirm it has sought independent legal advice on the options available and is contained within the closed report.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Mr. Oliver, can I ask you if you'd like to ask your second question?
Yes. If the council accepts the content of the report, will it make compliance with clause 4.20 of the current lease, return the airport to its previous condition, a precondition of entering any negotiations with the tenant on a new lease as recommended at 4.2.b in the report? And if not, why not?
Thanks, Mr. Oliver.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. The Cabinet is mindful to agree recommendation, if the Cabinet is mindful to agree recommendation and grant a new tenancy and specific terms of the new lease will be negotiated, the council position is protected. Legally, the tenant is entitled to a new lease and similar terms, subject to the responsibility of modifications, and therefore the council will not be able to insist on more onerous terms unless it be specifically negotiated. If the council wishes to apply more, then the clause of the facility deal, in addition, the existing schedule condition will apply. Any new tenancies, in the event of negotiation, will agree the terms will fail. An application to court will be determined that the precise terms of lease, and this could be made by either party. What I would say, I am quite conscious that all of you have submitted 22 questions. I will be supplying a full written response to all.
Thank you. Do I get your
Hopkins? I'll now move to Mr. Mark Anderson to ask the next. I'm afraid you indicated that you'd like to ask at today's session, so I'm now going to move to Mr. Anderson to ask his question, as those are the order in which we've received the question. So I'm going to move to Mr. Anderson now. Mr. Anderson, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Cabinet. I'm a Swansea resident. I'm also an employee of the Civil Aviation Authority, but I should stress that I'm not here on behalf of the authority this morning. I'm acting as an individual citizen. So my first question relates again to the document provided to the Cabinet today, and in particular section 3.1, which references that the airport has always been the subject of complaints and dissatisfaction in connection with the management of the airport. The document doesn't advance any explanation as to why there should be such a high level of complaints, nor does it recognise that the complaints relate not just to the management, but to the operation and the maintenance of the facility. And I'd like to know why the document hasn't addressed that issue in more detail.
Right, my apologies.
I'll go to Councillor Hopkins and.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. What I would say, and it is quite repetitive, but obviously we are in this position, particularly at the particular time. So what I will have to say is the council has been mindful to existing a landlord and tenant relationship, and there will be no comment on specific lease conditions associated with the breaches or remedies that are available. However, the council can confirm independent legal advice contained within the full close report, and furthermore, outlined in the open report, the council is dealing with this matter in the capacity of commercial landlord, and any operational matters are an issue for Swansea Airport and ultimately the CAA as the regulatory oversighting body.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. I'll now go to Mr. Bailey to ask his question. So, Mr. Alan Bailey, please.
Good morning. I speak as a user of the airfield, and I'd just like to know when the council will ensure that the terms of the lease are complied with and the airport is open 7 days a week.
Thank you.
Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Again, the council has to be mindful of existing landlord and tenant relationship, and therefore cannot commit on any specific lease conditions associated with breaches or remedies that are available. However, the council can confirm it has sought legal independent advice contained within the full closed report.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Thank you, members of the public, for your questions for today. We are now at 10 minutes, so I'm going to move on to councillor question time at this point, and I'll just pause for a second to allow Mr. Evans to advise members of the public how they can leave and rejoin the stream to view publicly.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I will remove you from the meeting, the members of the public, and please look at the message, the email you had yesterday or day before from Democratic Services advising you of the new link. Does anyone do you all have access to that link? Is anyone struggling with it? I can get it resent if you are struggling. No, you all seem to be okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'll remove you from the meeting now. Okay, all the members of the public have been removed from the meeting, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. One thing I would just emphasise before we move on to councillor question time is that all members of the Cabinet have seen the questions that have been submitted for councillor question time and have reviewed them prior to this meeting. And as Councillor Hopkins indicated in his responses, any questions that were not able to be answered verbally today will receive a written response, but all questions will be responded to that were submitted, even if they came in after the necessary statutory deadline. So I just wanted to give that reassurance that further responses will be made available. Okay, so I'll move now to councillor question time and ask Councillor Chris Evans, please. I understand you have a question.
Yeah, so a lot of the questions that I had were previously asked by members of the public. But what I'd like to ask is the independent legal advice that we sought. Did that include a site visit and an inventory of our council assets?
What I would say, we've been working very closely with Swansea Airport Limited over a number of years, looking, particularly to get us where we are. I'm not sure whether a full site visit would have taken place for the legal advice. What I would say is our officers have been working very closely with the airport body to ensuring that the present terms are improving. I would say it has been problematic, but I think we're in a far better place with the efforts of this cabinet and certainly the efforts of the officers of this council.
It's just the reason I ask is I was up there yesterday, and it's in a very, very sorry state. So I would recommend that people go up and see the actual state of the airport's in at the moment.
Can I just give an assurance that myself, the leader, and another cabinet member have visited the airport? I would agree there are some concerns, but what I would say, significant improvements have been made to the airport. But then again, that is subject to the relationship between us and the legal position we're in with the airport limited at the particular time. So we are aware there are problems, but it's certainly an improving picture. It's the impression we've been told at the particular time.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, and Councillor Evans, I just refer you to the closed report, which obviously you will have sight of as a councillor, which will give you further information about the legal advice provided externally.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further councillors' questions, we'll move to item 7, which is the local authority governor appointments, and I'll go to Councillor Rob Smith for this item.
Thank you, Leader. Can I formally move the report and thank those people who've come forward to volunteer for the important role of school governors?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm very happy to second that report. Could I ask then, are there any questions or comments from members? Hold on a second. We'll just pause that, Mr. Evans, while we wait for Councillor Stevens to rejoin the meeting.
Councillor Stevens is back in the meeting, Leader.
Okay, for just for Councillor Stevens' benefit, apologies, Councillor Stevens, we hadn't realised you hadn't rejoined. Councillor Smith has moved the report.
Okay.
I've seconded the report, and Councillor Smith hasn't added anything to the report in terms of content. So with that, I'm about to go to the vote. Before I do, does anybody have any questions or comments they wish to make, or any questions for Councillor Smith? If not, I'll ask Mr. Evans to launch the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been launched. I'll give you a moment or two to cast your votes. Right. Has anybody been unable to vote electronically? If you have.
Yes, please, Mr. Evans. If I've been unable to vote, so
Okay.
I'll vote for.
Okay. Any others?
Yes, I vote for.
Okay. Everyone else has been able to vote?
Yes, Robert Francis Davis, and vote for.
Sorry, I missed that. Who was that?
I will vote for Robert Francis Davis.
Francis Davis for. Okay. Sorry, someone's got. There seems to be background noise somewhere. And that's unanimous for, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. We'll move then to item 8, which is the car parking charges report, and I'll go to Councillor Stevens.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Leader. So this report seeks approval for the proposed car parking tariffs on council car parks. So just to give Cabinet some context on the report, our parking charges have not increased since 2014 and are actually 22% lower than where they probably should be. We've actually maintained some of the lowest parking charges in the country, and subsidised rates cost over 2 million in the last year alone to keep prices at a near record lows in council-owned car parks. You're all aware of the enormous pressures on our budget caused by inflation, the energy crisis, and insufficient local government funding from UK government, which why is that there is a need to reshape and look to increase charges from April, so we can ensure that car parking services are protected and maintained in the coming years. Even with the proposed change, we still remain cheaper than most other major cities. And you can see the tables of the report. You can see the tables of the proposed tariff and comparisons outlined in item 2 and 3 of the report. I'm pleased to say that for Park and Ride, in order to offer attractive, sustainable transport options, we'll be keeping the price the same, set at £1, which I believe puts us at one of the cheapest in Wales. And attractive, sustainable transport options such as Park and Ride help us meet the objectives of our city centre transportation strategy. Further to that, we're going to continue to look at our free bus travel promotions that have proved hugely successful across the county, and we'll commit to looking at additional promotions with partners like BID based on what businesses say they need. What evaluating our parking charges has enabled us to do is introduce for the first time a discounted residence parking offer. There'll be a new residence rate for each car park, and that will mean that residents will automatically save money and pay less each time they park. We have, as an administration, promised benefits to those living in Swansea and parking charge reductions over the standard rate for residents every day of the year is the first step in delivering. Is the first step in the direction delivering on a promise that we actually made at the election. So I want to thank Parking Services team for pulling together the report, and it's with that I move the recommendations as laid out on page 14 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens, and I'm very happy to second and fully concur with what you said, and I wanted to thank you and the officers for the work you put in to bring this report to us, and very important point you make there about the fact that we delivered on the pledge we made at the election to provide discounts to those living in Swansea. And as you say, every time somebody who lives in Swansea goes to park, they will now automatically receive a discount, which is great news for the people of Swansea. In addition, I also want to thank, obviously, Councillor Lewis and her team for the work that they're doing on the Citizens app, which will, in time, include further benefits so that people living in Swansea will be able to receive benefits and discounts across a whole range of services offered by the council and its partners. So again, delivering on the promises we've made. But thank you very much for that, Councillor Stevens. I'll open it up if anybody's got any comments or questions. If not, I'll ask Mr. Evans if we can go to the vote then, please.
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been launched. Has anybody been unable to vote electronically? If you raise your virtual hand, I can call you in to vote. No, we all seem okay. I will.
Yes, Mr. Evans. I haven't. Sorry, Mr. Evans. I haven't had the confirmation my vote's gone through, so I'll vote for.
Okay, that's it. Right, Rob Stewart for, and I can see Councillor Rob Frost Davis.
For.
Are any others needing to vote verbally? No, I will close the poll on that, and that's unanimous for, Leader.
Many thanks, colleagues. We'll move now to item 9, which is the General Building Materials Framework, calling.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. I'll be very brief. The reason why this report has come to Cabinet today is because it's quite a substantial estimated annual spend of £3 million. So clearly for visibility, I thought it was important that it came before Cabinet today. This will give us a much greater flexibility with a larger framework in order to carry out council housing maintenance and repairs. I don't have much further to add to the report, and very happy to move and take any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I'm very happy to second the report, and thank you for bringing this here today. As you say, it is not an insignificant amount of money that is contained within the report. Colleagues, if there are any questions or comments to Councillor Lewis? I don't see any hands, so again, Mr. Evans, if we can go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been launched. Again, I'll give you a couple of moments. Right, Councillor Davis, Robert Francis Davis, you need to vote verbally. Sorry.
For.
Any others needing to vote?
Likewise for me, Hugh.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Anyone else? Okay, that's unanimous as well, Leader. All four.
Many thanks, colleagues. We'll move then to item 10, which is a review of the statement of policy for licensing, and I'll call in Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Nothing much to add to the report. Say that this is a statutory this is statutory obligation for us to renew. We need to be in place by July 26. There are some amendments particularly on Appendix A, which are italic and highlighted. This is very much a statutory report. I've got nothing to add to the report. What we're asking today is to remove the report, to go out for consultation, then come back for adoption by council. So there's two recommendations which I sort of move.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Very happy to second. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments for Councillor Hopkins? If not, then Mr. Evans, again, if you could launch the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been lodged. Okay, Councillor Rob Francis Davis, how do you wish to vote verbally?
For.
Councillor Stewart?
For.
Are there any others who are unable to vote electronically? No. That's unanimous for, Leader.
Many thanks,
All
colleagues. Thank you. On then to item, which is the review of the policy for licensing of sex establishments, and again back to Councillor Hopkins.
Thanks, Leader. Again, this is a statutory obligation. It's going to go out every 5 years for review. Currently, we have one long-standing premises licence in a sex shop in Swansea. The review of the policy, officers have reviewed the policy and considered no changes are necessary. Again, the recommendations are that the existing policy of the purpose determined, and that we agree the policy should consultation and report back to council. Again, this is a 5-year statutory obligation that we need to review this policy. There are no amendments to the policy, so we intend to just go out for consultation subject to our approval today.
Many thanks, Councillor Hopkins. Thank you for moving. Thank you. I'm very happy to second. Colleagues, any questions or comments? If not, we'll go to the vote then, please, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been launched. I can see Councillor Francis Davis. Do you wish to vote verbally?
For.
And Councillor Stewart?
For.
Everyone else okay to be able to vote? I will close the poll then, and that's unanimous for, Leader.
Many thanks. And again, for the next report, item 12, we'll go back to Councillor Hopkins. It's the proposal to publish cumulative impact assessment for City Centre. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. What I would say, the current SIP has lapsed. We are in a position now where we've now come in with cumulative impact assessment rather than a policy. There's very little difference. The position regarding the cumulative income change review Since 2018, it has since been put on a statutory footing and amendments to the Licence Act of 2003. This came in about the 2018 as a SIP, and now we are looking at more of a cumulative impact assessment. Under Appendix B, we'll see the amendments. The legal position has not changed, but there are two recommendations. Sorry, there are one recommendation that we recommend Cabinet agree the proposed draft and then go out for public consultation. I so move.
Many thanks, Councillor Hopkins. And again, I think the cumulative impact policy has been hugely successful. Good to see the revision coming to Cabinet. And again, as you say, very happy to second the report. Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Hopkins? If not, again, Mr. Evans, if we could launch the vote.
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been launched. Anybody unable to vote electronically? Councillor Robert Davis? For. Councillor Rob Stewart?
For.
Everyone else okay?
Sorry, Hugh, I haven't been able to vote. I vote for.
Councillor Lewis? Let me just close the vote. Results. That's unanimous for. Leader, before we move on to the next item, can I just highlight that the fourth public questioner is looking to join the meeting. We've dealt with public question times. Do you want me to call her and to tell her just so she's aware, otherwise she's unaware that she's queuing?
Yes, please, Mr. Evans, if we could inform the questioner that obviously she's missed public question time and that we're now fully through the agenda, but she will receive obviously a.
Yeah. Shall I bring her into the meeting to tell her now? Shall I do it that way, or shall I just email her?
I think it's easier if you send a message via the system or an email.
Will do. All right. I'll get the team to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next then to Councillor Anderson for item 13, which is the fixed penalty notices for breach of household duty of care in relation to fly tipping. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, good morning, Leader. Thank you. The purpose of this fixed penalty notice is to seek approval to adopt and the implementation of household waste duty of care fixed penalty Wales regulations of 2019 and to issue fixed penalty notice FPNs as a more proportionate response to tackling small-scale fly tipping where appropriate. Just going through the introductions, Leader. The household on 1.1, the household waste duty care fixed penalty Wales regulation is an amendment to the Environment Protection Act 1990, EPA 1990, Section 34. It amends and improves previous legislation available to the local authorities in Wales. In 1.2, the Act amends legislation to provide an opportunity for householders to avoid court and a possible criminal record by the way of fixed penalty notices. FPNs offers a more efficient and proportionate response to tackling household duty of care in regard to fly-tipped waste, which will also help ease the burden of the court system. I go to the fixed penalty in section 2.2. Using FPNs is an optional course of counsel to tackle those who admit the offence and free up the court and counsel time. In section level of fixed penalties in section 3.2, the level of the penalty is set out in the legislation and in the table below, which is as follows. In 3.2 is fixed penalty of £300, but discounted penalty for early payment, if offered, is £150. The recommendation is that the discounted penalty is offered for early payment, which be set at £150 to be paid within 10 working days. The alternative would be not to agree an early payment option with an FPN having to be paid at the rate of £300 within 14 days. In section 4, it covers all below up to 4.1 to 4.1.3. Section 5, the income financial implications. The income generated would be an additional to existing budgets and there will be no additional costs. However, that extra income is expected to be minimal. Any such income will be used solely and incidentally to offset the costs of other early interventions, awareness raising, advertising, removal and disposal and enforcement action in respect of fly tipping. Section 6.1, the Household Waste Duty Care Fixed Penalty Wales Regulation 2000 describes that the ranges that certain fixed penalties are required to fall within. The proposed amount is in the report as a specific regulation. I would like to move the report in the recommendations on the page 198. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson, for that comprehensive run through. That's really helpful. Very happy to second. And as you alluded to, I think the ability to levy fixed penalty notices is a real advantage and will help us deal more quickly potentially with issues of fly tipping in our communities, which we know blight a number of communities across Swansea and wider across Wales. So thank you very much for that, Councillor Anderson. Very happy to second. Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Anderson? If not, Mr. Evans, again, could we launch the vote, please?
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been launched. I'm aware two of you are having difficulty, so shall I take your vote, Councillor Stewart?
4, please.
4.
4, please, Mr. Evans.
Thank you. And Councillor Robert Davis?
4.
Are there any others having technical difficulties? Councillor Lewis?
Sorry. Yes, 4 for me. Thanks, Hugh.
Thank you. Anybody else struggling to vote electronically? And I can see that's unanimous for, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. We'll now move to item 14, which is the update estates management report on Swansea Airport, and I'll go to Councillor Hopkins.
Sorry, Leader, I'm just going to drop out, okay?
Yeah, apologies if we can
Thanks.
pause for a second, because there are members who have interest. Thank you, Councillor Stevens.
Okay.
Okay, I think Mrs. Councillor Stevens is now at the meeting, so Councillor Hopkins.
Thanks, Leader. Before I move or present this report, what I would like to do is put my thanks on record to Deb Smith, our legal officer, Alex O'Brien and Jeff Bacon for presenting this report and the work that they've done to bring it here to Cabinet today. What I would like to bring to everybody's attention that all Cabinet members have seen the public questions in advance and read the written responses prepared today. The Cabinet members have also read the statements received from various persons and organisations, a letter from the Gower Society, and a joint email from Rebecca Evans and Tonia Nazzi, MP. All Cabinet members have read the exempt report on agenda item 16 and the appendices included. The special legal advice and information contained within the exempt report. The purpose of today's report is to update the Cabinet on the current situation between Swansea Airport and to make a decision on the existing lease in this position. The proposal transaction relates to a statutory lease renewal and a process which is the tenant is illegally entitled to renew all of the lease, as prescribed by the Landlord and the Tenant Act 1954. Ordinarily, there would be no need for the Cabinet to concern itself with these renewals, as they are prescribed in legislation and the Council is very direction of deciding to grant renewal or not. If the council wishes to oppose or renew, there are very limited grounds for us to do so. The council will not comment on specific breaches of the lease in public meeting. There are matters which are commercially sensitive and may not be subject to negotiation or litigation. Therefore, consideration in the closed report together with the detail of the legal advice received to council is accepted. There's been some historic failings at the airport on which the council has been intervened and as a result of formal action. The council supported and the improvements made to the airport and significant issues have now been addressed, although it accepts certain breaches still continue. The council had the benefit of clear legal advice and the tenant is statutorily entitled to renewal of the lease. The council can only oppose on limited statutory grounds and receive the legal advice of the nature continued the breaches. The options available to the council and the risks involved pursuing certain course of action is set out detailed exempt report under agenda item 16. The council is mindful of the legal procedures and the current ongoing issues. The council is dealing with a matter on a strictly commercial basis in line with existing tenancy and relevant legislation and legal advice received. The decision to renew or oppose the lease must be a balanced approach and a test of reasonableness and associated risks and their remedies. The council has available, therefore, the issue of the repair and maintenance and the loss of certain services. However, the decision to oppose or renew the lease is based on existing tenancy and subject to legal advice received within the consideration of ongoing condition. In the terms of the loss of service is very much operational matter and one for Swansea Airport Limited to manage and consider. The recommendations on page 205 in accordance with the legal advice of the council's legal officer and external advisor Gerard in Cabinet does not oppose the principle of the S26 request. Landlord Tenant Agreement 1954 for a new tenancy which exists in tenancy. The Airport Limited proposed alternative lease terms. Recommendation 2 asks to delegate authority to the head of property services and chief legal officers to agree appropriate terms of the lease and renew safeguarding council's position, whilst ensuring the tenant continues to invest in further assets. I so move the recommendations on 205 and would thank again for all the officers' commitment to this. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Again, I won't repeat what you've said because I think you've clearly laid out there the rationale for why this is here and the advice that has been provided to Cabinet. I just want to draw a couple of points out, though. It is, as you say, very unusual for Cabinet to be dealing with any lease renewal. It is normally a process that occurs under statute and doesn't come near Cabinet, but given our obviously previous involvement in decisions, we are again looking at this today. As you say, the Tenancy Act is very, very strict and provides significant rights to the tenant in terms of renewal. But I just wanted to be clear that what we are adhering to, if we support the recommendations today, is both the internal legal advice and the external legal advice that has been sought. And we have two sets of legal advice that are very clear in terms of the position that Cabinet must take. Now, if we were to set aside that advice, we would have to have significant reasons for doing so, which do not exist. So in that respect, you know, we are again in a position where we have very clear legal advice which directs us to take the actions that you've laid out in the recommendations. I would just say, I mean, if this is approved today, then, as you say, it will begin a period of negotiation in terms of agreeing a new lease. And we will be expecting to see the tenant continue to invest in the facility. And the aspiration, I think, for all of us, for council, for Cabinet, for officers, and for users of the airport is to see a successful airport operating in the area that can benefit everyone. And I think that is what everybody wants to get to. And finally, I would say, I just pay respect as well as you have, and thank the officers for the work that they have done on this. I think, as we have seen from a very small number of people who've interacted with us prior to this meeting, personal attacks on the integrity and ability of officers is simply unacceptable and should play no part in the debate that takes place around issues like this. And I would hope that the very small number of individuals who have done that will desist from those actions, as we have, we want to ensure that we get to the best decision possible, and that we're able to make under the legislation that is before us. So thank you very much, Councillor Hopkins, for that. Colleagues, I will pause there. I'm happy to second the report. Are there any further comments or questions for Councillor Hopkins in terms of the reports? If not, Mr. Evans, again, if you could launch the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. The vote has been launched. Right, Councillor Roberts-Davies, do you wish to vote verbally?
For.
Councillor Robert-Stewart. Councillor Stewart. Lost you for there for a minute. Anyone else struggling to vote electronically? I'll just leave it open for another moment. I think we're having a connectivity problem with Councillor Stewart.
I think you might need to rejoin.
Yeah, I think we may have to elect Chair Pro Tem whilst he's having this connection issue.
I propose Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
All in favour, Councillor Hopkins? Only once the leader is offline. I think he's back in.
Mr. Evans, in case you didn't get my vote, I vote for on that one. Apologies, I had connection issues.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Let me just close the poll there. And that is unanimous for, Leader.
Many thanks, colleagues. I'll now go to our legal officer. I'll go to Tracy Meredith, our legal officer, to give us advice in terms of exclusion of the public.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to consider whether the public should be excluded from the following item of business, which is agenda item 16, the update on the estate management report of Swansea Airport. So you will see my recommendation, which is set out on page 281 of your papers, that the public be excluded from consideration of agenda item 16 on the basis of paragraph 14 of the relevant legislation, in that the report contains confidential information relating to the financial and business affairs of the tenant, and that information is set out at various places in the report attached to agenda item 16, but primarily on page 291 of that report. So this paragraph 14 is subject to the public interest test, which I've set out paragraph 2.2 on page 282 of your papers. And that public interest test is that you have to weigh up the public interest in maintaining the exemption and whether it outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. And secondly, and I apologise that this is not specifically referred to in the report, is that paragraph 16 is also relied on by myself, in that the report contains information in respect of which a claim for legal professional privilege could be maintained. Now, this paragraph is not subject to the public interest test, but Cabinet can waive legal privilege if so minded. But my advice to you as the Chief Legal Officer is that the report contains lengthy and detailed legal advice which should not be put into the public domain, particularly in light of potential and threatened legal proceedings against the Council, and that therefore Cabinet does not waive that legal privilege. Also, that the public interest test is in maintaining the exemption, and that you therefore vote to exclude members of the public when you're considering agenda item 16. So I've nothing further to say, Chair, but I would call on Hugh to launch the vote, please.
Many thanks, Tracy. Sorry, Ms. Meredith. Yes, colleagues, if you, Mr. Evans, if you could launch the vote, and colleagues, if you could cast your votes, please.
Yeah, for this is just a verbal vote I do on this one, Leader. So if you could raise your virtual hands.
Yep. Okay, all those in favour could raise your hands. Who I vote for, please.
Okay. Anyone against? And anybody abstaining? No, that is unanimous for, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, we will go into private session. Mr. Evans, if I could ask you to cease the broadcast and recording, please.